Welcome to the Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Welcome indeed. We're glad you're here today. We are, as always, coming to you from world headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut, which this weekend will be the home of the first annual at our own Palmer Field, the first annual teams full contact checkers tournament. Get your tickets now; they're going fast. Those of you who may have seen my original promo for this show are probably and rightly expecting a gentleman named Mark Reed, who was unfortunately unable to make it today through circumstances beyond his control. But my friend Brian Kelly was good enough to step in. He was with us on March 18th, and he's with us again today. Brian, welcome and thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be back with you.
It's good to be back with you too. For those of you who may not have seen Brian's first appearance on the show, it was about the self regained, I think is what we called it. And Brian was talking about the fact that, you know, he used to think that vulnerability and openness were signs of weakness. So I'm going to lead this segment with a question, Brian, but first I want to share something else with you. 2 weeks ago, I had John Dunia on. John bills himself as the shame doctor and was very candid and vulnerable in sharing the experiences that led him to be that and the work that he's done. And subsequent to that, we exchanged a number of emails. And at one point, he told me that he lives in Henderson, Nevada. He told me that he plays trumpet in the Henderson Symphony. So I said to him, "You're a man of many talents." And this is what he wrote back to me. "Does it seem like since we can do something, every and anyone else ought to be able to do it? We're nothing special. Why shouldn't we be able to do it? Or perhaps it's my own shame that says, you're nothing special, no matter how many times someone gives a compliment." So I wrote back to him and suggested to him that perhaps that wasn't shame at all, that maybe it was humility. But given the way our last conversation transpired, Brian, at the end, I wanted to ask you if you have difficulty when people recognize positive things about you and express those things to you, and so that you don't feel like you're alone, or that might be a trick question. I do. I wonder how you feel about that.
Yeah. So for me, it was when people praise me or, single me out. I've typically not wanted to be the center of attention. I'm a we person rather than me person. So more so feeling that thank you for the compliment, but can we move on kind of thing, right? It's like that, let's not spend too much time on me. And then it was the building the muscle of being able to receive was something one of the muscles I needed to build. And that's something that maybe many of us struggle with is we want to give, and we're givers, and that's great. But one of the greatest gifts for me was building my receiving muscle and being able to receive compliments and things of that nature in a way that acknowledged and appreciated the person giving the compliment with the praise or what have you, and then just receiving with grace.
I just had to look at my clock up here. We're 4 minutes in and I've already learned something from you. Actually, I'm sorry. I've learned two things from you. One, I love the idea of the receiving muscle. Man, I may be developing one. I'm going to have to think about that. But I also love what you just said about, and I don't know if you attribute it to the receiving muscle, but being able to reflect on the person who gave you the compliment. And I don't know, I don't know where you think your difficulty with that came from. I can tell you in my case, and this is not meant to be as derogatory as it's probably going to sound, but my parents, both of them, routinely said to me and my siblings, "Don't, no, don't talk about yourself. No, 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 no. You shouldn't be beating yourself on your chest, on the chest, or anything like that." Were there experiences like that in your life? I remember you told me that your folks were very encouraging of your athletic endeavors. Do you have any idea where that might have come from in your life?
So it's sort of a yes and, right? Yes, the people around me were encouraging, but there was also this thing of, oh, don't bring too much attention to yourself, right? Be
Yeah,
humble, right? And it's ironic because humility is my number one value, like innately. Like no one needed to tell me that, but people around, it's sort of like an energy reflection of themselves that they project onto you is kind of what I felt. And I didn't necessarily realize it at the time. And so the thing about receiving, right, and it being it's a gift back, it's actually the way we receive can make someone feel like maybe not great, right? If we're just like if we dismiss it, right, then they're being dismissive of the praise. And so is that really how we want to acknowledge, recognize, and thank them for it? And that was the thing too. It's like, whether it's just, oh, great play, Brian, in a game or something like that. And sometimes that humility can come off as arrogance unintentionally.
wow.
There's some of that through lived experience that I reflect back on. I recognize that, but it was totally furthest from the truth. But I now realize, like, I had some abilities with sports, right? If me just kind of just uh, acknowledging, but really in a somewhat dismissive way, kind of thank you, but moving on and not kind of giving space and air to the compliment. Um, I realized that could be kind of dismissive and not feel great to the receiver. And so it's the same thing in business or in life, right? If someone kind of compliments you on your outstanding work and you're kind of just wanting to move to the next thing and not it's not giving air and space to the actual person and the acknowledgement that they are giving to you of something that they wanted to praise you for. And there's something that doesn't sit right, in terms of that. And honoring the person that's actually acknowledging you. And I think that's important.
Yeah. I loved your notion of energy projection. So if we are dismissive, if somebody were to compliment me, my typical response would be, well, yeah, but, and then I would either I'd try to rationalize it away or change the subject or something. What are we projecting when we do that?
So so it's
It,
projected discomfort, I think,
yeah,
right?
and maybe lack of self-acceptance or self-awareness.
It could be, it could be. And so I think um, it's, it's really not being able to receive. And that I think that is a skill that can be learned. I mean, I've learned to be better with that, right? And I think it comes from um, what we observe and the energy we feel when we're kind of growing up in the conditioning of how do I handle a situation like this? And it comes from insecurity. Oh, if you bring too much attention on you, it'll be embarrassing to us or to you or something like that. That kind of notion or something along those lines. Um, and so it's sort of like don't be embarrassing to others and reflect badly on yourself, your family, that kind of energy. When I think that misses the point of honoring the person that's actually praising you, and you don't have to bring overly attention to yourself, and you can honor the person at the same time. And I think prior generations were overweighted on honoring others and not kind of bringing too much attention to yourself, which an element that I respect. And then there's also the opportunity that I think was not built and developed as much, which is to respect the person and honor the person that kind of gave you the compliment.
I love that idea. There are some things which I guess given my last name, I'm sometimes willing to attribute some things to my Irish heritage. I remember saying to a gentleman whose heritage I think is Iranian that there's something about anger that brings me crystal clarity. If I'm ever confused in a situation and I'm not sure what I should do or what decision to make, if something happens to put me into anger like that, I can see my way right through it, make the decision that needs to be made, and move on. That was so utterly alien to him. And I appreciated his telling me that. And I wonder too if, and I don't know if you share this, I tend to dismiss, I think, at times with humor, and to use that to deflect. Do you ever find that in yourself?
I've seen that in you, Mark. Yeah. Sometimes.
Hold on, I'm sorry. You've seen that in me?
Yeah. I mean, like on the bench, right? I've seen kind of it's humility, but you use humor to kind of receive and reflect back.
Or deflect.
Maybe it's deflect. Good point. Yes.
I'm so glad you said that. And I don't know if you remember a single incident in which that might have happened. I can tell you one. Do you have one in mind?
I don't. It's like a behavior I've noticed. It's almost like a pattern. So I don't remember the specific incidents, but I remember this is how Mark kind of handles it when people kind of praise him or something along those lines.
And I also recognize in myself that it's something that I do when I'm anxious. I default to humor when I'm anxious, but I can tell you one specific example because it was pointed out to me by Andy Scarantino, whom I just adore, because she's just going to tell you what you need to hear. That's the definition of friend in my estimation. So I was actually hosting the bench one time, and I don't even remember what I said, but Andy started talking about the fact that there are no other people. And what she meant was, and she didn't mean we should be inconsiderate, but that we have to be self-possessed first. And so that was the context in which she was saying there are no other people. And so I made a crack about, wow, I don't know what Anne's going to do when she finds out I don't exist. And Andy actually sent me a private message later. And what she said was, she thinks I use humor to hide behind. There's just no way I could ignore or dismiss an observation like that. So it's amazing to me and instructive and humbling that you also notice that. Is that something you feel like you default to? I mean, again, I'm typically inclined to say, "Oh, that's just an Irish thing." Well, maybe it's not.
I don't know that I default to it. The way I use it is a tool sometimes that I bring out, and that's why it's neither good or bad that you do that, right? It just is, right? It's just a tool sometimes, and maybe it's to deflect attention away from me. Maybe it's wanting to redirect the energy towards honoring the other person in some way. I think it's probably related to humility with me, with that being my top value. It's okay, receive, but like give that like a second and then go like 10 or 15 seconds towards the other person. That's sort of like the use of humor there too. I think it gets back to also when you feel uncomfortable, humor is a way to go about that may not be that brings somewhat positive energy to a situation rather than otherwise.
Well, it might, but I also have to consider, given what you've shared already in this conversation, that it could be perceived as dishonoring the person with whom I'm speaking, which is,
Dismissing what they're saying and going right to humor. Okay, yeah, I
that
see what
is
you're
the
saying.
last thing that I would want to happen.
Hmm.
So then, of course, there's the dilemma of, well, okay, well then, what do I do with my sense of humor? And I think the answer to that is be careful, be aware. It's just, I mean, I have to recognize it's just not appropriate all the time. And it never occurred to me that people would perceive it as anything other than my not taking myself seriously. But if it seems dismissive, that's dishonoring.
So it's interesting, Mark. What came up for me is the difference between reaction and response, right? Humor is a reaction for you in that situation, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
what comes up for me is how do you interrupt that? One way to think about or try, and maybe this will work, or maybe it wouldn't. But what I came up with was you want to honor the person. Well, a simple thank you might do that to interrupt, and then you can use humor so you kind of do both. But it's an interruption to the energy that may seem dismissive potentially,
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even,
or not
especially,
even go to humor.
yeah, yeah. And especially as I become more aware of my own default reactions, interrupting isn't even something I would choose to do. I would rather hear somebody out.
Mm. Well, how are you then acknowledging?
Um, well, considering the fact that humor has been my default, I guess I'd have to admit, well, I don't have a plan B
That
here.
was the thought behind the thank you piece of it is the acknowledgement, and then you can just listen to others or humor or whatever. Some way to acknowledge and honor the person. I say thank you. You can be whatever works for you, kind of thing. It doesn't have to be, but something there. The interruption is to the reaction, not to anything
Oh,
else. It's the
oh, to
interrupting the
interrupt.
reaction,
Yeah.
so you intentionally respond,
Yeah,
and to avoid the dismissiveness that might come otherwise.
which is so unintentional.
Yep.
Uh, man, that's the tough part about it. Yeah, I want to give you one example of the humor thing. Um, the summer that I was 20, and I'm going to try to be really brief about this. It turns out, to make a very long story short, that I was born with a hole in my diaphragm, and nobody figured out this out till I was 18, because apparently I never had a chest X-ray before I was 18. So most of everything that was supposed to have been in my abdomen was up here. So
Mm.
the summer I was 20, I had to go into a hospital in New Haven, which wasn't Yale New Haven, and get it repaired. And it meant slicing me from right about here to under my left shoulder blade. And then they ended up having to open my abdomen to take all the stuff out to make room for um, the stuff that was supposed to go back in my abdomen so they could patch the hole. My point is, I was terrified,
Mhm.
as you could imagine. When I went for my post-op visit with the surgeon, I thanked him for knocking me out before they even brought me out of my room. He said, "We didn't knock you out." I said, "What?" He said, "You were fully alert and conversant all the way down as to the OR. As a matter of fact, you slid yourself over onto the OR table and you were cracking jokes." And I thought,
Wow.
holy mackerel, there's some unconscious defensiveness for you,
Wow.
right? So obviously enough, I was so terrified that my brain just wanted to block that stuff out. And yet, in something like, what do we call that? Reflexive mode or something? Apparently,
Mm.
in an attempt to alleviate my anxiety, I was making jokes with the folks in the OR. I have no recollection.
And that's why I say it's a tool, right? So you've developed it over time, and it's actually there to help you, not really harm you. But the thing you're trying to avoid is the unintended consequence of seeming dismissive when you're not intending to.
Yeah, exactly right. Um, so we can get into this a little bit before the commercial break, but what do you make of John Dunia's equating? And his response said, well, he was going to give that some thought, but at least initially mistaking humility for shame. It was as if he didn't want to acknowledge the fact that he's as talented as he is. And all I knew about him when he came on the program is that he's the shame doctor, and he's written a book. He's also an owner's rep for a bunch of different manufacturing companies in the construction industry. That's how he makes his living. I had no idea. So he's doing that. He's playing trumpet in the Philharmonic, or the symphony orchestra. And he took my compliment with shame.
So my initial thoughts are his relationship with shame has been developed over a long period of time, right? And I equate it to my unlearning journey and my continuing ongoing unlearning journey. He may be still earlier in the process of his journey with growing his relationship with shame and growing his relationship with humility in terms of saying, yes, I am a good musician, I am a good this or that. But my sense is the conditioning from the shame is still a huge part of who he is, and it's understandable, right? His vulnerability is still part of who I am and my relationship with it. I just have grown to a point where I handle it differently, and he's on his journey with that too. And maybe it's just where he is on the journey there. I would think someone that's been conditioned, especially early in life and throughout life, to shame, would have an unhealthy relationship with humility, right? I think that would make sense. The question becomes, how might you grow one and unlearn some of the, grow the relationship with self to the point where you have a healthy relationship with shame at the same time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And he was candid enough to share that he came by that shame in what sounds like brutally, and I don't mean in a physical sense, a psychological sense, or emotional too, a brutally restrictive religious environment. And everything, and this is how he put it, everything, all his behavior was directed toward getting to heaven. That's what he said. And he said it even cost him his marriage. I mean, that's actually quite unbelievable. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our first break right now. And when we come back, given the work that you do, all of the conversation we had last time and this time so far has been all personal. I would like to talk about how you encounter this and work with it in your professional life.
Great. Looking forward to it.
All right. So let's do the break, and we'll see you back here in 3 minutes.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back. Thank you all for staying with us. Brian, just before the break, I said that I would like to talk about how you apply what we've been discussing in your professional life. And I'll start by asking you, do you typically work with groups, individuals, or both?
Mostly it's been individuals, but I do work with both.
I have to believe the dynamics of those situations have to be different.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking when you and I were exchanging thoughts in the first segment, I was thinking that what you were doing with me, what you were making me aware of, must be very much like what you do when you work with individuals. Is that fair to say?
It is, and it's less about relating my experience, but more about curiosity in terms of what I'm hearing, because it's about the client, right? And asking questions to help them kind of what is the word I'm looking for? Looking for them to kind of find the wisdom within themselves. And so, yes, it's very similar. Just the approach is somewhat different because we're having a conversation now. I'm sharing my story, but it's less about my story when I'm working with clients. It's more about what am I hearing? What being in the question, what question is going to help the client kind of move to where they're what's going to be helpful in helping them move forward. And so it's more curiosity and questioning than my story relating that kind of stuff.
I have to imagine that as your story grows, you become better at what you do. And I think it was after the show that I did with John, Deborah Beauvais, who's the owner of this station, texted me. And we said something about the fact that time seems to be going faster. And I said to her, yes. And as I get older, I feel like I learn faster, which I think only means that more things are coming at me. And thank goodness, knock on wood, I'm able to absorb at least some of it. Do you find that in your work?
I do, and more things are coming at you. Is kind of what you said is helping your learning there. For me, it's about being a better listener, right? And and how am I listening? Am I listening to respond, which may have been more of my prior story, or am I listening to kind of understand and connect? Am I listening to what's not being said? So from the work I do, it's more about listening and active listening. You've heard that. and remaining in curiosity mode and not being in my story, that's the thing we have to kind of guard against, is bringing too much of your story, because that brings the me energy that can become difficult for a client. So what you were talking about before with dismissiveness and shifting energy, if we bring too much of our story, the client says, "What are you talking about you for?" They may not say it, but they're saying to themselves, where's that energy coming from? And that's where it can get difficult. So that's the training with coaching, is remaining curious and being in the question and for the client.
And I didn't imagine in any coaching session that you would start injecting your story into it. So I'm going to go about this a different way. Do you think and I don't know if you were doing the work that you're doing right now 10 years ago. Were you?
I started about 11 years ago, yeah.
Okay. Do you think, in terms of the experience you had acquired up to that point, do you think you were as good at it then as you are now?
No way.
And that's kind of what I mean.
And so I think I know what your question is, in terms of, is my lived experience make me better at what I do?
Yeah.
And so yeah, and so that's why clients, or even being on the bench, and situations where, and even conversations like we're having now, that help me grow my perspective and my awareness, it's gold for me. I love that, right? So, and it's not about reinforcing my belief so that I feel stronger in my belief. I don't care. I want to learn. I want to kind of understand different perspectives, whether it's culturally, whatever, different ways to look at things that I may not have directly experienced, that helps me see through a different lens, that enables me to have greater empathy, all the human factors, right? Greater awareness, greater compassion, greater confidence, right? In terms of whatever the human factor is. But if I stay wrapped in my perspective, there's something there that's getting in the way of it. And it's probably me in terms of the insecurity and the needing to be right, or to hold on to that perspective. So what I do in the lived experience is the fuel for becoming better at what I do. And that's sort of what then human factors does, right? Is help others kind of do that for themselves.
And I know you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. You, in this conversation today, have made me a better husband. Just because of the things that you've brought to my awareness, and my recognizing the need for me to be aware of those things. So thank you for that, for sure. If Anne were here, and she's not, she would thank you too. So how is it different in team coaching? Because I mean, it's like this amalgam of personalities and styles, right? How do you do that?
It's much more complex with the team dynamic. You've got to understand the perspectives and appreciate those perspectives and the energy, and what are we talking about right now? If it's team communication and leadership, and how to work more effectively as a team, what's getting in the way of that, and focusing on the behavior, not the people, right? And so one-on-one, that can be challenging. In a group dynamic, it's even more challenging, because then you get different people are in different places with regard to ego and defensiveness and openness to doing things. And so that's the complexity of it. And you've got to set the ground rules in that situation for how we're going to be together in this, however long we're going to be together in the exercise, because the purpose for us all is getting better with whatever the topic is, whether it's working together as a team, or leading from where you are, communication amongst the team, whatever the topic might be. And so there's a individual and a team aspect to it. So how am I showing up? And then how am I showing up in relationship to the team and what the team might need? And, some people are either kind of in this space of, well, I'm right with what I'm doing. Don't tell me to look anywhere else. Or other people that may be on the other side are like, well, how can I be better for myself, for others? What is this helping me to see? What is this helping me to be? or who is this helping me to be? And that becomes the opportunity. It's just like the more people are involved, the more complex it is. Just think about, for me, everything. I have sports examples, right? If everybody is an all-star on the team, that's great from a talent perspective. But a team that works more effectively as a team that is less talented, I believe in the long run, and a 7-game series is always going to be a team that has athletes because of human factors that get in the way of them operating together. Who takes the last shot? Are you going to pass the ball, right? Who's going to play defense, right? And that's why team construction becomes an art, right? How do you put the team together? And, those kind of things. So the same thing with a work team, right? If you have all all stars and people that have to be the person, I won't say the man, it could be the man or the woman, then you're going to have trouble in terms of working together as a team to serve your client and your business operation and your business goals. And so that becomes the challenge, right, with the team.
And I have this visual that, I'm almost seeing like a whiteboard or something with a few objectives on it. Is there a way? I don't know how you go about what you do, but is there a way to sort of lead people toward those objectives, and letting them express their own styles, I suppose, and then helping them understand how those styles may or may not be conducive to reaching those goals, which I'm imagining are team goals.
Yeah, it's really, the goals are usually business related goals. How do I be a better leader? How do we work? How do we make more money? And whatever the business goal is. And ultimately, the process I use gets to looking at yourself and who do I need to be to do what I'm being asked to do, or who do we need to be? Okay, and if I have all pitchers on my team, right, and I need a shortstop, back to a sports analogy, the pitcher may be able to play shortstop, but may not really have experience with turning the double play, so there may be issues. Same kind of thing. And so, and maybe you didn't sign up for this role, so maybe that's another awareness for, hey, it's not the right fit for me. Or maybe from a team perspective, hey, I may have hired all second basemen and I didn't really intend to do that. Maybe I need to be better in the hiring process. So it raises real issues that can help you get better, but may not be really comfortable to acknowledge in the first place. And so when we get hired, we're hired to serve a client, right? We're hired to serve a customer, to serve a business. And so my perspective is always a we mentality, but that's not what we experience, right? So it's getting people to realize the dynamic of what is my contribution to this team? What am I being asked to do? What am I able to do? Where's the gap? And where do I need to grow to best serve how I'm being asked to contribute? And if there's misalignment with that, maybe there's an opportunity to identify a different way for me to contribute that may better serve me and the team and the client. And so sometimes we get, hired into a role, and a manager may be looking at the roster and saying, "Oh, I've got all these positions filled." Yes, you do. Do you have the right people in the right positions? And so it's more of coming at that, got it from that perspective of where's the issue? And then let's look at it from the people perspective, and how are we creating the conditions for the people to thrive so they can create the conditions for the business and the client to thrive by how they contribute. So part of it could be an exercise in, do we have the right people in the right roles? And maybe there's an acknowledgement there, because that could be part of the problem. Or there's a communication issue because someone is always monopolizing the time in the meetings and not letting someone else speak. And then people are just then shutting down and not bringing their voice to the table because they don't feel like they can. And the person that should be kind of interrupting and saying, wait a minute, we want to give time to Mark to speak, or Rachel or Brian to speak. And that dynamic's not happening, which is leadership, right? And kind of, even if you're not assigned the leadership role of having the title, someone's got to step in and say, hey, well, we haven't heard from this person yet. Let's get some different perspectives on this so we can create, a more inclusive view of how we proceed. And so it's a lot of curiosity and questioning. It's the same kind of tools. It's just different dynamic in terms of how we do it. But it's generally through people that we create the change with the business focused on it. The issue will be likely a business related issue. But if you want a transactional thing, you can just kind of give them something to do, an exercise or kind of thing, and say, yeah, this is the kind of thing you can do. If you want transformational things, you've got to change the people and how they're thinking, how they're operating together, and valuing not only their own contribution, but other people, and not thinking of it as well, Mark and I are going for the same kind of promotion. I can't really divulge what I know, because if I do, then I'm kind of compromising. It's kind of like, well, no, in order for us to best serve the company and our clients and the team, I've got to bring my best, right? And not everybody can be named to the all-star team. Not everybody can be an all-pro, right? And so just get better, right? And it takes the ego out of it. Does that kind of become an issue when it comes to compensation and role opportunities and those kind of things? Yeah, but then that's where you have to own your career. And maybe there's an issue with whether you're owning your career or not, right? And whether, we've kind of been conditioned this, if I do my job and do it well, I'll be recognized and I'll be promoted. And we all know that's a fallacy, right? And so am I building effective relationships with not only people on my team, but people throughout the organization, the leadership? Do I understand what the challenges that leadership's facing are? Do I have ideas I might want to bring to the table that I'm not even getting into the room or having an opportunity to share because I'm not effective with building relationships, which is critical to my owning my career and becoming better. And so some of it gets back to ownership and you owning it instead of kind of being, well, I'm a victim, right? They're not promoting me. They're not giving me a raise. Instead of what might I do better, and kind of owning that.
So I'm going to ask you one question, and then we'll take the second break. And I know where we're headed after this. Do you find people's attitudes changing toward their willingness to contribute? And I'll tell you the genesis of my question is the older of my two sons, Sean, who's 40. And has recently decided that he's not going to coach basketball anymore, even though he loves that more than anything in the world, because he came to the realization that he cares about it more than his players, their parents, and the administration. So let's leave it at that. And we'll start, when we come back after the break, we'll start with, do you recognize that in your coaching? And then I have some follow-up questions to that. So we'll see you on the other side of 3 minutes.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality.
Where potentiality meets reality.
Where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on Dreamvision7radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for staying with us. Brian, just before the break, I was relating an experience that my older son Sean had as a basketball coach, and you were nodding. And before we got to the break, I was struggling to find a way, utterly devoid of judgment, to ask a question about ego. So I think I've just figured out how to do that. Do you see something like what I'm going to refer to now as an evolution of attitudes? And what has that been like?
Can you help me understand what you mean by evolution of attitude so I stay on point?
Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my son Sean. He is absolutely consistent in his rules. If you don't come to practice, you don't play. And dear parents, if you can't get your child to practice, call me and I'll pick him up. And that doesn't happen. So the child doesn't come to practice, the child doesn't play, and then the parents are all over the coach. So, I guess in terms of what people think they have to do, and the question that I was going to ask earlier in an ostensibly non-judgmental way was, what variable does ego play in your work?
In my work, so ego can be good and bad. I think it's basically just with anything, it's how we choose to use it, right? And what is our relationship with it? Back to a human factors kind of conversation. Going back to Sean's situation, right? In terms of he set the expectations with everyone, right? And doesn't matter if you're the best player on the team or you're the 12th man on the team, whatever, same rules. And if your kid can't make the practice, you can't get him, I'll come pick him up, and no engagement, right? So his needs weren't being met in terms of the way the team operated, and the parents and the students or the players weren't aligning there. And so if that's the environment, right, is it ego for Sean to say, oh, no, I don't want to deal with this? Or is it just a smart kind of awareness that this situation, it's not that I don't want to coach anymore, it's I might not want to coach this situation anymore, because it's really a team effort, meaning parents, players, and coaching and administration for this all to work. And if I'm not getting the support from the parents, the players, the administration, and it's happening consistently, and then I'm getting yelled at because they don't like the rules that they signed up for, then there's ego from, well, my kid should be playing. I don't care if he comes to practice or not. He's the best player or she's the best player. And not acknowledging that the coach is the leader of the team, and how they're organizing the team is in the best interest of everybody, or it's intended to be that. And so no one player or family is above the team. It shows up, and my perspective is more important than your perspective. That's how it tends to show up.
Okay, so here's what I was getting at. And while you were talking before the break, you said something about your work is all in an attempt to get people to be better within the team context, working toward the company's objectives. So the word I wrote down was definition. So it seems to me that the first thing you would have to do, not you, the first thing the members of the team would have to do, your team, not Sean's team, would buy into the definition of better that you're working with. And presumably that definition has to do with the accomplishment of the organization's objectives. And so I wonder how the egos of individuals work in that context. And I could see some folks who already believe they're right, thinking, oh, no, I'm not, I can't go along with that. And I could see other people at the other end of the spectrum saying, wow, I never thought about it that way. Here's what I can do to be a better contributor to those objectives. So what do you, and I'm looking at those 4 chairs behind you, and I'm thinking about one person with a really tough ego. No, I already got this all figured out at one end, and at the other end, the person who's saying, wow, yeah, I really could change what I'm doing. I really could do that. In a group, how do you manage that?
Well, the reality is you're going to have a spectrum in any group, 4 people, a team of basketball players, a work team. And so just acknowledging that that's the reality. And so what is the goal, right? Is the goal a team goal? Is it, and what is your relationship to that? If the goal is to improve sales and, so what is your contribution to sales? Then you have to look at it through the lens of the goal. And that becomes an ego thing. Is it, that's not my job? Is it, like the curiosity and not having any attachment to what I think, but having an open mind to, hey, I can approach this differently and perhaps bring a different value to the team. And so ego is going to be at play no matter what we're talking about. If there's if there's 2 people, 1 person, there's going to be an element of ego. Now, again, it's what is your relationship with it? Is it healthy? Have we been conditioned to expect to get our way? And my way or the highway? Or is it, like you said, from the opposite end of the spectrum? Yes, I have my perspective, but the goal is X. And so my way of looking at this is how can I best contribute to X? Not how am I necessarily, but how can I? And from where you are now, what needs to grow in me, likely? I may need to get training. I may need to be more confident as sharing my voice and my perspective. I need to be creating the conditions for everybody to speak up, because maybe you have people that are, on the introversion, extroversion spectrum at different points with their confidence and willingness to speak up. And so it's always going to be, when you're dealing with people, there's always going to be ego. The issue becomes, what is our goal? And so language is important, and buy-in, as you talked about before, because otherwise, why are we here? Like, if this team's goal is to increase sales, whether you have, we have different people within that room that are going to have different contributions to sales. Maybe the person that's not the actual direct salesperson might have an idea that helps everybody, but are we even asking them, right? And so it's changing the mindset from, again, people in roles. Let me ask Mark because he's the salesperson, or let me ask Brian because he's the technical person, or whatever the case may be. We're looking for X. What are your thoughts, right? In terms of inviting voices in. So the invitation becomes not putting restrictions and not having a. So where then the question comes back to the leader is, you're trying to get to this outcome. What have you tried so far? And who have you been asking? And all right, so then what haven't, then the flip side of it is, what might you do differently to get to different outcomes? Because if you're doing the same things, the whole thing about, doing the same thing and trying to get different results is insanity, right? And so it becomes an invitation to, again, change your relationship with the human factors. And it's also, which can be difficult, because when you start getting with the people side of things, you get ego involved, and well, I'm not changing, this is what I've been doing this for 30 years kind of thing. And it's real. And so you've got to understand the dynamic of your team and what is your goal in the session, right? So your goal is to increase sales. Well, maybe the goal of the session is not to increase sales, but to get people to become uncomfortable with we're comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And so it's changing the goal. So that's the micro goal to get to that, right? And so maybe we have 3 or 4 sessions to get there. And so that's got to be a definition. You've got to set, I call it setting the coming to a shared agreement for the context of the session. And for this session, this is what our goal is we're going to have a conversation about where we are, where we want to go, and how each of us is going to contribute to achieving that goal. And this may involve getting uncomfortable. Well, we're going to start the process of helping everyone grow more comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where growth happens, personally and as a team. And so, let's tell them it's going to be messy, right? Let's just be honest with them. But messy is okay.
You made me think about the relationship between, and I think this may depend on the perspective or the mindset of the leader, but the relationship between disagreement and contribution. If someone in a group is disagreeing with something, let's just say on a tactical level, but has the opportunity to contribute an alternative, then it seems to me a leader who allows that is effectively managing his own ego. And if the person is going to see someone's desire to contribute as nothing other than disagreement, then, I mean, there's nothing there but a brick wall, right?
Yeah. And so that's the thing, right? Is disagreement insubordination, not contributing, not being a team player? Or is it inviting a different way of going about things that might help us look at something differently and help us become and achieve better? And that's the thing too. It comes back to the attitude in the room, and that's usually reflected in the attitude of the leader. And that's what setting the context for. Hey, there's no right answers. There's just ideas of how we might. This is what we've been doing. We need to do something that's going to get us there faster or better or whatever is the goal there. In order for us to do that, we've got to be open to other perspectives other than our own. And in order for that to work, we've got to be comfortable not being right if someone else has the idea, because the goal is for the team to bring their best contributions. It doesn't matter if it's your area of expertise, because guess what? Everybody's got other lived experience and expertise before they came into the role you hired them in. And so what happens when you let people kind of bring their whole selves and their whole experience to the job, and not just, well, I'm the salesperson, right? Yeah, I'm the salesperson here, but at the other place, I was the operations person. At the other place, I was the technical person. Like, we get boxed into roles instead of the unique people we have there, right? So, in their lived experience. So it gets back to, that's where the people gets to the business outcome, because the issue is typically a relationship issue with human factors that get in the way of contribution, which gets into the way of performance.
Agreed. And I cannot believe that we've eaten up another hour already. That's just crazy. So please do tell folks how they can find you, how best to get a hold of you, because I would certainly endorse your work, and you are a person worth knowing, to be sure.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for having me. Yes, LinkedIn is a great place. And then also my website, which is humanfactorsconsulting.net, or brian@humanfactorsconsulting.net, which is my email.
I'm going to thank you again for being on the show, and I'm going to especially thank you for pinch hitting on really short notice. You bailed me out today, my friend. Thank you.
Always glad to be with you, Mark.
Okay, and to the rest of you, thank you for being here. I'll be back again live on June 3rd at 1 p.m. Eastern, and I hope to see you then. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.